A little ways back, when I was diving into the subject of haunted military aircraft, I was once again reminded of the unique relationship that soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen have with their vehicles. I myself was a radio recon Marine most of my career before going to MARSOC as a SOCSF signals intelligence specialist, so I was probably never on the same vehicle twice. They just taxied us everywhere. So while I can't empathize with being attached to a military vehicle, there is a car I've had for a very long time that I just can't bring myself to get rid of. I've been driving it since just after high school, a 1999 Mitsubishi Eclipse, a dying icon of the late 90s and early 2000s. I drove that car my whole Marine Corps career, even shipped it across the ocean a couple times. When I was deployed overseas for more than a year, the mice and ants got in it, plants grew up through the wheels and engine compartment, and the sun and rain destroyed the paint. I spent thousands repainting it and restoring it. I've put my blood, sweat, and tears into that thing. And now, 15 years later, it's becoming harder to maintain it, and it's still just a money pit. It needs a transmission overhaul. It would cost more to fix it than I could hope to sell it for. My wife says I should just give it away, but she doesn't understand. That car, it's special. Like, it has a soul. It rips my heart out to think about getting rid of it. All that being said, maybe that's how some guys feel about their military stuff. Like how in the old cavalry days, it was the relationship you had with your horse. You owe your life to it, in many ways. But what if it was the opposite? As in, you're assigned to a ship or craft of some kind, and you wish you weren't. Because even though it's in perfect mechanical condition, something is just off about it. You can't say what, but you can just sense it. With no discrimination between service branches, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and the rest, these are true stories of war machines that are believed to be cursed. I'm Luke LaManna, and this is Wartime Stories. Hey, Chaplain, sir, you got a minute?
Call me Chaps, Lieutenant. Everyone does. What can I do you for?
Sure, Chaps. So, some of the guys were wondering, what are the chances you would be willing to give one of our helicopters a blessing?
A blessing?
Yeah, like with holy water and stuff.
You know I'm not a Catholic priest, right? What's this about anyway?
It's hard to explain, sir. There's just been a bunch of weird stuff going on with one of our birds, and then we did some digging around and found that some guys, well, died on board.
What are you trying to say, Lieutenant?
Sir, I know it sounds crazy, but something is just wrong with it.
What is she, down for MX? Isn't that what you boys call it? Look, I certainly acknowledge your faith on this, son, but that sounds like you should be talking to an engineer, not...
It's not exactly a mechanical issue, sir. Well, I mean, it is, but it's just... Look, could you just humor me and come take a look at it?
Well, yeah, that I can do. So, what's this about someone dying?
Well, it was in Vietnam, sir. We did some digging and found the aircraft records. This first story was originally submitted by a U.S. Marine Corps aviator to Nick Orton's Tales from the Grid Square Project. In it, this Marine tells the story of a helicopter that everyone in his squadron tended to avoid, if at all possible. An aircraft that they affectionately referred to as the Demon. He writes, "My squadron, HMH 363, flew CH-53 Deltas, or Dirty Ds, which first entered service in the late 1960s and served all the way up until 2012. They participated in every conflict from Vietnam to Operation Enduring Freedom. It was such a cool historic aircraft to fly. She was huge, fast, and surprisingly agile for a bird of her size. But due to her age, she had her lion's share of maintenance issues. Of all the helicopters in our squadron, one sticks out the most. Bureau number 157133, side number 42. Those in the Delta crew who flew her after 2006 would know her by the U.S. flag painted over her broom closet in the cabin, but to others, she was known as the Demon. During OEF in 2010, she earned the nickname Demon because she was constantly down for MX, or in need of servicing. The reason for this was because she would always be having these scary, unexplainable mechanical issues, like dropping both generators mid-flight, which often caused the helicopter to react suddenly and violently. Cockpit gauges would behave erratically, spiking, flickering. It was spooky, almost like they were taunting us. And she would also shoot chaff and flares while on the ground, despite the buckets being off and mechanically saved. The defense systems were shut down, locked out, and designed so that triggering them accidentally like that shouldn't happen. These were just a handful of issues that even engineer reps would look at and reply, "That's impossible." Things became so bad that my fellow aircrew would often refuse to fly her. Aside from all the mechanical issues, she gave off this dark, unsettling kind of energy. She was a hangar queen for a while because of all of this. Towards the end of our tour, me and some of the guys did a bit of digging, Googling her bureau number, which took us to a site called Papa Smoke, an old online forum for Vietnam-era flyers. And it was there we discovered the Demon's dark history. While serving in Vietnam, she'd apparently suffered a hard landing on October 30th, 1970. The resulting crash took the lives of 2 men aboard, the crew chief, Sergeant Bruce Allen McNeil, and a passenger, Lance Corporal Gerald Burdett. After discovering this, I reached out to one of the chaplains on Camp Leatherneck, asking him if he'd be willing to bless the helicopter. After he understood the situation, he replied, "I am not doing that. You need a freaking Catholic priest for that. Just say a prayer for the man in the Lord's name." So that's what we did. Well, a few pilots and aircrew did. Not everyone was religious, or they just said it was stupid. Now, say what you will, but for those of us who acknowledged the fallen sergeant and prayed for him, the Demon would fly just fine. Maybe a few cockpit gauges and dials would wave at us, but nothing terrifying like before. It really was the strangest thing. That seemed to be the point when she really turned around. Before long, she was entirely safe for flight and was being sent out on more missions. But, and again, I know how some people might take this, for the guys who refused to say the prayer, those strange mechanical issues kept coming back. I myself clocked in about 30 more flight hours in the Demon during the rest of our deployment. And every time I stepped aboard, I said, "Sergeant, this is your bird, but watch over us here on Earth and keep us safe. In Jesus' name, amen." It seemed to help, except this one time on my last mission in country when things got a little hairy. We were tasked with flying the USMC Commandant, General Conway, the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, and a random 3-star on an area of operations tour of Helmand Province, visiting multiple forward operating bases. It was as we were approaching FOB Rankle that it happened.
We've got brownout, no visual from the cockpit. Murph, you've got it. Take us down slow.
Roger, coming down. Easy. Easy.
Wave off!
Whoa, wave off! Wave off!
As we made ready to land at FOB Rankle, our propellers kicked up a whole bunch of sand, resulting in what we call a brownout. We couldn't see a damn thing from the cockpit, so we had to rely on our crew chief in the back to guide us down. Tricky, sure, but it wasn't anything we weren't used to, being in Afghanistan and all. So we begin to slowly lower ourselves through the dust. The seconds ticked by, feeling more like minutes. Suddenly, our crew chief started screaming over the comms, wave off," which basically means that we had to immediately abort the landing. As we hovered away from the dust cloud, we suddenly realized that we had drifted dangerously close to the FOB's HESCO barriers, these giant stackable dirt and rock-filled perimeter walls. I mean, we missed those walls by inches. The other pilot and I just kind of looked at each other, sick to our stomachs and white as ghosts. We eventually landed and did the rest of our AO tour without incident, hardly speaking during the last few hours of the mission. During the debrief, we graciously thanked our crew chief for basically saving our asses with his wave-off call. But what he said next still gives me chills to this day. As we thanked him, he gave us this confused look before saying, "Sir, I only repeated the wave-off call. Weren't you guys calling for it first?" I was shocked. It wasn't us who made the call. I told him, "Did you see any of the passengers yelling it out?" The crew chief shook his head. "No, sir. They were all half asleep. I thought it was you guys." I knew right then that initial wave-off call didn't come from us. And I don't know what else it could have been, other than that Marine crew chief who lost his life in that aircraft nearly 40 years earlier. To this day, I believe that from Vietnam to Afghanistan, Sergeant McNeil was watching over us on that flight. I can't explain it further. I just know that he saved our lives that day.
Bollocks!
You alright?
Yeah. God, what is it with this thing anyhow?
What, the plane?
Yeah, it feels like she's in here every other week needing some kind of work.
Well, lads, call her Christine for a reason.
Oi, mate, what the hell? You almost struck my damn head off. You want to make sure nobody's up in the landing gear before you close the hatch?
That wasn't me. I'm nowhere near the controls.
This next story, originally submitted to the UK magazine 40 in Times, centers around a British Harrier jet with an incredible streak of bad luck. Having served as one of the Royal Air Force's primary attack aircraft from 1969 to 2010, the Harrier was always known as a tricky plane to get the hang of. Even the most seasoned pilots learned to be wary of the aircraft's challenging and unforgiving nature, especially when transitioning between conventional flight and the aircraft's revolutionary hovering capabilities. But despite its well-known reputation as a difficult aircraft to master, many RAF pilots who flew this particular aircraft can't help but feel as if something far darker was behind the near constant mishaps. I've seen plenty of stories on these message boards about jinxed ships, but I don't think I've seen many about unlucky, possibly even evil, aeroplanes. This particularly unhappy history has played out across the world, culminating at RAF Wittering, which straddles the border between Cambridgeshire and Northants. Like many military airfields or airfields with a military history, RAF Wittering has a decommissioned aircraft parked by the main entrance in the role of a gate guardian. The jet in question is a Harrier GR-7 Alpha jump jet, serial number Zulu Delta 469, a plane whose unfortunate operational career led her to being dubbed Christine after Stephen King's possessed Plymouth Fury in the famous 1983 horror novel. It's alleged that her removal from active service long before the Harrier was officially retired in 2010 came as a great relief to many pilots, ground crew, and engineers. Here's a quick summary of her many misfortunes, besides the usual time and money-sapping technical tantrums. Compared to a normal aircraft of the same type, she never remained serviceable long enough to be economically viable. Furthermore, she gained a reputation for being actively dangerous. Engineer trapped by sudden uncommanded closure of undercarriage doors. An almost identical accident in which a technician nearly had the top of his head sliced off. Twice damaged falling off jacks with gear raised at an Italian airbase while on ops over Bosnia. Flown back to Harrier Hospital in Boeing C-17 Globemaster. In-flight collision with high-tension power cables in Norway. Admittedly, this was probably a navigational error. 3 significant bird strikes, quite remarkable given her very low flying hours at the time. Cockpit canopy deciding to fall off over Canada. Aircraft returned to Blighty in C-17 transport again. Damaged by shrapnel from a Taliban rocket while parked at Kandahar in 2005. This was probably fairly par for the course. The aircraft was apparently so accident-prone that she'd only managed about 1,000 flying hours since entering service in 1990. That's maybe only a quarter of the usual hours. The airframe was eventually written off as a viable warplane, but her parts could, in theory, be repurposed and used on other aircraft. So once again, they load her up and ship her back to England. But on arrival at RAF Bryce Norton, her wing structure took a tumble while being unloaded from the Globemaster. Another technically sound bit of Christine appeared to have self-destructed. To add to the strangeness, when one of the few remaining unknackered parts of Christine, the tail fin assembly, was fitted to another Harrier jet, Zulu Delta 375, immediately after receiving these parts, the previously reliable aircraft became dogged by endless technical problems unrelated to the tail fin components. For the airmen involved, those aware of Christine's reputation, this really threw more fuel on the fire of superstition. Eventually, the RAF just gave up on Christine and retired her to adorn the entrance of RAF Wittering. And if rumors are to be believed, there have been some darkly humorous occurrences with this unlucky machine being located so close to a busy road. Only about a month or so ago, an incident took place in which a motorist passing the base on the A1 lost control of her vehicle, a Renault Scenic, for unknown reasons. She swerved off the dual carriageway and collided, rather dramatically and accurately, with Christine.
Gott im Himmel. I can't feel my fingers anymore.
You will, when they turn black.
It's just right. I'd rather be down below with the engines.
Down there you suffocate, up here you freeze. Either way, the Kaiser gets his due.
Let's hope the sea's in a merciful mood today. Do you see that?
See what?
There, on the bow.
That's an officer.
I don't recognize him.
No one should be standing out, sir.
Air officer, you shouldn't be on the deck. It's not safe.
Wait, that's Richter.
Richter? But that's impossible.
Get the captain. Now.
For those who have spent time out on it, the sea is a desperately lonely place. So of course, no episode about cursed military machines would be complete without at least one story about a naval vessel. Warships have long been associated with stories of the paranormal, and when it comes to military personnel, sailors are a notably superstitious bunch. Did you know whistling on ships used to be forbidden? It was once believed that this would summon storms or gales, as if one could whistle up the wind. Still today, similar to people who knock on wood to ward off bad luck, whistling is treated as taboo. Another example would be coins. Some ships still follow the ceremonial tradition of placing lucky coins under the mast during the ship's construction, or at least somewhere under the keel in modern military ships. From an outside perspective, some paranormal researchers believe that large bodies of water can act as a kind of conduit for unusual activity. But some warships are plagued by dark energy and omens long before they've even left the shipyard, as was the case for the German Type 3 U-boat, UB-65. This submarine's long run of misfortune started not long after her construction began in May 1916, as the men of Hamburg's Wolkenwerke shipyard welded and hammered away at UB-65's hull. An overhead crane lowering a steel girder into place malfunctioned. The massive piece of steel snapped loose and plummeted to the deck below, sending the workers scrambling. 2 of the men didn't make it. The girder crushed them both, killing them instantly. There was little time to mourn the death of their friends, however. Germany was at war. The engineers scrubbed the blood off the deck and carried on with the ship's construction. Several weeks later, 3 men working within the confines of UB-65's engine room were overcome by a sudden wave of toxic fumes. Gasping for air, the men rushed to the hatch, only to find it jammed shut. By the time help arrived and someone came to open it from the outside, the 3 men had suffocated. The falling girder could easily be explained away as a tragic accident, but something about this latest incident unnerved the men. They never did find out where the poisonous fumes originated from, and the engine room door was found to be in good working order. There was no reason for it to have been jammed shut, preventing the 3 men inside from being able to open it. When UB-65 was finally completed and ready for sea trials in the summer of 1917, its bad luck hadn't improved. As she made her way through the choppy waters of the North Sea, a sudden squall rolled in. The captain ordered the men below decks. Before he could reach the hatch, one of the sailors on deck was caught by a wave. The wave seemed to come out of nowhere, crashing over the U-boat's deck and sweeping the sailor overboard. Despite hours of searching, he was never found. Later, the crew of UB-65 were in the middle of conducting underwater dive tests when one of the submarine's ballast tanks ruptured. This sent them into an uncontrollable dive, which was only stopped when the boat settled on the ocean floor. On the surface, support ships worked tirelessly to raise UB-65 back to the surface. After about 12 hours, they finally got her up. Cracking open the main hatch, they found the ship's officers and crew stumbling around inside like drunken men. The cause? More toxic fumes which had flooded the interior. Nobody died this time, but after the sailors were given some time to recover, rumors started making their way around. With all of these deaths and strange happenings, the men began to say that there was something evil about their submarine. After repairing the damaged ballast tank, UB-65 was eventually prepared for her first combat patrol. In spite of their superstitions, the crew were nonetheless excited to finally get out and see some action. Then, tragedy struck once again. While loading up on supplies and torpedoes in the German port of Wilhelmshaven, one of the warheads detonated on the crowded deck. The blast sent men reeling, hurling bodies and U-boat shrapnel into the air. 5 men were killed, including the ship's second officer named Richter, along with at least 9 others being badly wounded. The crew was now completely demoralized. UB-65 hadn't even seen combat, and already 11 men had died. But the war went on, so the ship was again repaired and made ready to sail. Once excited, the crew was now hardly enthusiastic about taking her back out on what would no doubt be another death cruise. It was in the winter of 1917 when UB-65 had arrived in occupied Belgium, finally ready to go hunting for enemy ships. The night before she was due to leave port, there were 37 officers and crew on board. As if these men weren't haunted enough by all of the tragedies, they would soon find out that they were not the only ones on the ship. That night, down inside the belly of the submarine, the captain of UB-65 and his fellow officers were happily pouring themselves a drink, raising their glasses in a toast to what would hopefully be a successful mission. The mood ended suddenly when the hatch burst open. A frantic-looking sailor tore into the room, looking for the captain. His eyes were wide and his face drained of color. When he finally managed to catch his breath, he told the whole room that he and a fellow crewman named Pedersen were standing watch on the upper deck when they saw a man making his way up the ship's gangplank. As he drew closer, they realized that they were staring at the face of Richter, the second officer killed months earlier when the torpedo exploded on the deck. Shaking, the sailor described how, as they watched, the spectral man stepped onto the deck before he suddenly vanished into thin air. The captain scoffed, thinking that his men had simply started drinking before he had. His attitude changed, however, when he began investigating the report. He found Pedersen sitting paralyzed in fear against the conning tower on the upper deck. There was no smell of whiskey on either of the men. It was obvious they hadn't been drinking. Being a sailor himself, the captain knew that seafaring men tended to be a superstitious bunch, and although he wasn't sure if the men had actually seen a ghost, they definitely saw something that had them on edge. The captain did his best to calm the 2 sailors, ordering them below decks to get some rest. They'd be sailing off to fight in a war in a few hours, and he couldn't afford to have any of his men in hysterics. When morning came, Pedersen was nowhere to be found. He had apparently jumped ship. To the officers, it was an act of cowardice. To the crew, a bad omen. Only later would it become clear just how fortunate that decision had been. As UB-65 set out on its patrol and the days passed, the growing sense of unease inside the submarine became palpable. Not a fear of enemy planes or destroyers, but of the spirit of Richter. More and more men were coming forward with stories of their own, often catching a glimpse of the officer as he disappeared into the sub's torpedo bay. Even the captain soon became convinced. As the ship sailed through the seas just off the English coast, one of the lookouts began frantically calling for the captain. When he arrived on the conning tower, the frightened lookout pointed down towards the prow of the ship. There, standing rigid despite the rolling sea, was the second officer. The men watched the apparition for several seconds before it vanished. With all of the men living on edge, the crew were otherwise becoming increasingly concerned about one young sailor in particular. His name was Eberhard. At first, his fellow crewmen thought it was just fatigue and combat stress, but his growing paranoia was becoming hard to ignore. When they pressed him on the matter, Eberhard told them what was bothering him. Richter's haunting spirit was an uncomforting thought for everyone, but Eberhard said that Richter's spirit had singled him out and had been actively stalking him ever since they left the port. Eberhard then fell into hysterics. The ship's doctor sedated him, and everyone hoped that he would come back to his senses after some much-needed rest. But even with morphine in his system, Eberhard somehow managed to sneak out of his bunk and make his way above decks. The lookouts barely had time to ask what he was doing before they watched Eberhard throw himself overboard into the churning waters. The bizarre death of Eberhard left the crew numb. They felt trapped in their own ship. And before UB-65's first combat patrol would end, 2 more men would be killed. One of them was swept overboard in an incident eerily similar to what happened during the U-boat's sea trials. The other was the U-boat's coxswain, Lohman. He succumbed to wounds suffered during an attack by a British destroyer. Limping back to port for repairs, in spite of everything that had already happened aboard the vessel, the ship's first outing was technically a success. The crew did their jobs well, managing to sink 4 merchant ships and badly damaging a 5th. After arriving back in the Belgian port of Bruges, the crew were given some much-needed R&R as the captain oversaw preparations for their next voyage. The sense of calm wouldn't last long. As the captain walked the ship's decks, supervising the repairs and loading of supplies, a familiar siren began wailing across the port. Startled, the captain looked up. Allied bombers were swarming in the sky. He watched as they released their payloads over his head. Time momentarily slowed down and then sped back up. Explosions riddled the docks and sent the men diving for cover. The captain ran to get off the exposed U-boat. Undoubtedly, it would be targeted. He had scarcely reached the gangplank when a bomb exploded nearby. Shrapnel tore through the air, right into his neck. The captain was decapitated instantly, his head tumbling into the water, while his body was thrown back onto the U-boat's deck. His body lay there for hours, eventually covered by a blanket. As soldiers and sailors worked to aid the wounded, some of them could have sworn they had momentarily seen an unknown officer on UB-65's deck, standing silently next to the body of the captain. Following this final incident, many of the crew assigned to UB-65 flatly refused to go back aboard the ship, putting in requests to transfer to other vessels. Rumors of the so-called cursed submarine then made their way up the chain of command and finally caught the attention of the German Admiralty. Surprisingly, they didn't punish the men. They quietly approved the crew's transfer requests. The reason for this aren't exactly clear. It's possible that, with this many crew members banding together all at once, higher-ups in the German Navy wanted to simply avoid causing a scene. At any rate, it was obvious that swapping out UB-65's crew with a fresh one would be the most effective way to quickly get the U-boat back into the fight. As the new captain and crew prepared for their first underway, Rumor had it that a Lutheran minister was quietly brought in to bless the ship before its next deployment. Whether true or not, it evidently didn't rid the ship of its bad luck.
Target in sight. That's a U-boat. She's listing the port. A few degrees. Looks like she's dead in the water.
Do you see any topside movement, sir?
No. Either they're all below trying to keep her afloat, or there's no one left aboard. Stand by to attack. Flood tubes 1 and 3.
Aye, sir. Flooding tubes 1 and 3. Standing by. Good Lord, what the hell was that?
Did we fire?
No, that wasn't us. She just blew apart. Must have been an internal detonation.
On July 10, 1918, Captain Paul Frederick Foster of the American L2 submarine was patrolling the waters off the west coast of Ireland. As he scanned the ocean expanse around him, Foster noticed something drifting on the surface a couple thousand yards out. His initial thought was that it was a buoy that had broken loose and drifted out to sea. But regardless, he ordered the sub to periscope depth and went in for a closer look. As the L2 closed in, Foster peered through the periscope and saw that it was in fact a German U-boat, which he identified as UB-65. She appeared to be dead in the water, making no evasive movements as she listed to one side. Thinking she may have been forced to surface after taking damage, Foster decided to finish the job. He ordered the torpedo tubes flooded and lined up his shot. But before he could give the order to fire, UB-65 suddenly exploded. Not from a torpedo or a bomb, but from the inside. The blast tore the ship apart, the mangled hull of UB-65 then slipping beneath the waves for the last time. For an instant, Captain Foster thought he caught a glimpse of a lone figure standing on the forward end of the sinking ship. But no bodies or survivors were ever found. Like the murky water she now lies in, the passing of time makes it hard to tell fact from fiction when it comes to the story of the cursed U-boat. UB-65 was indeed a real German submarine credited with sinking 7 enemy vessels and damaging many others before being lost with all hands in the summer of 1918. But the stories of its hauntings and supposed curse didn't surface until well after the end of the war. In 1932, naval journalist and analyst Hector Charles Bywater shed light on the strange story of UB-65 in his book, Their Secret Purposes, Dramas and Mysteries of the Naval War. According to Bywater, he first came across this story in a pamphlet published after the war by a German psychologist named Dr. Hecht. The doctor himself had apparently heard the tale from an officer who once served aboard UB-65, but had left the ship sometime before she went down. Many years later, researchers George B. and Michael Goss would attempt to validate the account, but when it came to actually tracking down the sources cited in Bywater's story, namely Dr. Hecht's pamphlet, Goss and B. came up empty-handed. It doesn't help that official German naval records from the time, at least those anyone has ever been able to find, don't mention any of the U-boat's strange mishaps. In certain cases, the existing records actually contradict Bywater's claims. In the story, UB-65's first captain is said to have been killed during an air raid on the Belgian port of Bruges. However, UB-65 only had one documented captain during her lifetime, Kapitänleutnant Martin Schelle, who went down with the ship alongside his men. Even the bizarre way UB-65 exploded and where she was sunk has been called into question. According to American naval records, UB-65 was sunk by the L2 submarine off the west coast of Ireland on July 10, 1918. In 2004, the British Royal Navy was conducting a routine survey in the waters near Padstow, England, when it stumbled on the wreck of a previously undocumented U-boat. Upon further examination, markings on the U-boat's propellers confirmed that the wreck was that of UB-65. Her presence near Padstow aligned with naval records of a U-boat being engaged in the area on July 14, 1918, after a Portuguese-flagged merchant vessel was torpedoed and sunk. The wreck of UB-65 showed no signs of a catastrophic explosion, but without being able to get inside the wreck itself, they weren't able to rule out the possibility of some kind of internal damage. It's possible that depth charges dropped from an overhead destroyer, ruptured vital systems, or even cracked the U-boat's hull, resulting in flooding. Whatever the case, it wasn't a quick end for the 37 men trapped aboard. Researchers noted that some of the sub's hatches were propped open at the time of her sinking, possibly the result of a desperate last-minute attempt to escape as the ship went under. Whatever truly happened to the UB-65, its violent end was undoubtedly as miserable as any of the haunting encounters that might have ever happened to her crew. And maybe that's where the truth really lives, somewhere between what can be proven on paper and what the men who were there carried with them afterward. Because whether it was a German submarine in 1917, a British jump jet named Christine, or a Marine Corps helicopter, simply known as the Demon, the common thread isn't just perceived curses and ghosts. It's people. Men who trusted their lives to these machines day after day. Machines they maintained, relied on, and sometimes survived death only by inches. Over time, those machines stopped feeling like tools and started feeling like something else entirely. Something that could protect you, or warn you, or, if you believed the rumors, something you might never escape. Call it superstition, call it coincidence, call it the human need to make sense of chaos in places where chaos is constant. But in war, when steel becomes shelter and machinery becomes the difference between coming home or not, it's not hard to understand why some machines are remembered as cursed and others quietly thanked. Wartime Stories is created and hosted by me, Luke LaManna. Written by Jake Howard and myself. Audio editing, sound design, mixing, mastering, and production coordination by Alex Carpenter, with additional audio work by me. Animation and motion design by Hot Sauce Video. Research by Jake Howard and myself. Artwork by Picata. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around here for the after action and the credits. I don't know if I've ever been on a cursed vessel, although some of our ships were plagued with mechanical issues. Waking up in the middle of the night, the ship engines dead in the water. We're all sweating to death. That's what woke us up in the berthing, because the AC is now no longer working. Come to think of it, one of the ships I was on was said to be haunted, the Peleliu. There's a story there that I still need to read. I will say that a pressing thought that was always on my mind was, what will I do if this goes down? Every time I stepped onto a military anything, plane, helicopter, especially helicopters, ship, and maybe not so much land vehicles, but those AAVs that go in the water, yeah, if you've ever seen one of those, that in my mind screams metal death trap. I mean, right from the beginning, one of the things that they have you do in the Marines is practice jumping off a 40-foot tower into the pool to simulate jumping off the flight deck of a ship into the ocean when you abandon ship as it is sinking. We had Marines that were terrible swimmers. I asked a guy one time, hey, why did you join the Marines if you can't swim? What if the boat sinks? And he said verbatim, well, I guess I'll just die then. But I do hate that feeling, jumping off a high place. I think high divers are some of the craziest people. You can find videos of this online, but there's always that one Marine who didn't keep their eyes on the horizon, looked down as they stepped off the edge, and then belly flopped, their arms flailing like they were rolling down the windows. That was painful to watch. So the helo dunker is something else that comes to mind. It's this big plastic helicopter fuselage that they suspend over the training pool with a crane, They strap you inside it, they lower it into the water to simulate a very gentle crash, and then because the top of the helicopter is heavy, they flip this thing over under the water to simulate what the actual experience would be in the ocean. Then you have to unbuckle yourself and either knock out a window or swim out of one of the other openings. I was pretty comfortable in the water. Recon guys, you kind of goes with the territory. Eventually you had to be. So one time I'm sitting there doing my helo dunker qualification, waiting for the rotation to stop before I calmly unbuckle. And this kid next to me is just flailing around, scrambling to get his buckle open. It's when the water goes up into your sinuses that gets people. Some guys just feel like they're drowning at that point. So he's panicking and just has no idea where to swim. He finally gets free of the straps and he just starts trying to kick his way out. His boot catches me right in the side of the head. Lovely experience. They also have an AAV version of the helo dunker, so not just the helicopter, but the tracked vehicle one. I did that one too. The top hatch of the AAV has this large lever bar that they use to seal the top hatch. On the pool version, everything is plastic. So I got up, I closed the hatch, it was super smooth. Easiest thing in the world to pop this back open once we started sinking and have to scramble out of the top in the training pool. Then in Okinawa, we were training up at Camp Schwab, the base haunted by the ghost of that little girl apparently, and they have to exfil our team from a training scenario with these tracked AAVs off the island back to the ship. First and last time I ever want to ride in one of those. We get out to the beach, and you can tell when the vehicle goes from driving on hard pavement to dirt to beach sand, you know, it's kind of soft. And I'm wondering, when are we going to stop and get out so a helicopter can fly us back to the ship? And then all of a sudden the AAV is rocking and rolling and they're handing out horse collars, these inflatable vests that you hang around your neck. And it's like, oh, so we're going to float this giant tank made of steel back to the boat. I see. Everyone got seasick. It's hot, it's cramped, it smells like diesel fumes. It took us hours to get back on ship. The sea was too rough for us to make it into the well deck, so they made us just trail behind the ship forever. It was awful. Well, earlier on this death ride, one of the crew gets up to close that hatch I was talking about on the top of the vehicle. Ocean water spraying inside, so once we got out of the open water, they had to close it. And he uses a 10-pound sledge and proceeds to hammer that rusty lever bar to seal the top hatch. And then he throws the sledge back into a back corner. And nobody else is paying attention to this process as I'm watching, and because everybody's getting sick. But I'm watching this and I'm thinking, I don't think any of us are going to be able to open that if this thing actually starts sinking. Like, that's going to take a lot of force to open that lever. And that top hatch was the only way out. Everyone's just going to panic. I'm going to get kicked in the head again, and that's just how we're going to die. So I'm wondering why they even bothered with the horse collars, because if we did sink inside this enclosed vehicle and I inflated it, I'm just going to float up to the top of this steel death chamber. I don't mean to be flippant. Guys have died in these things. It's wild. I guess I just have a hard time imagining any of the tracks guys, the AAV guys, falling in love with their vehicle. I hated it. Didn't trust it at all. But the whole point is, from the get-go, the Marine Corps, the military, they are training you how to escape death from helicopter crashes, AAV sinking, ship sinking. That was always on my mind. You know it's going to happen. You're just waiting for it. That's actually what they said to us. They said it's not if the helicopter is going to crash, it's when. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, liking, sharing, everything and anything you guys do that helps support this show. We really appreciate it. As always, a huge shout out to both our Patreon and channel members for your incredible support. May God be with each and every one of you, no matter what you are dealing with. And we will see you in the next episode.